The palace had been broken long before she arrived. She could see it the moment they carried her through the gates. Every face in that courtyard carried the same specific exhaustion. Not fear. Something past fear. The kind that comes from living with it. Reverse the Crazy Curse, Part 2. She remembers everything. The curse had no official name in the palace records. The court physicians called it the Crimson Descent. 3 stages. No cure. In the first stage, the afflicted became irritable, erratic, prone to sudden emotion. In the second, they lost the thread of hours. Days arrived out of sequence. In the third stage, staff stopped trying to explain it to outsiders. Rendael was in the second stage when she arrived. Approaching the third. She had watched empires collapse before. She knew what the third stage looked like. The court moved around his episodes the way water moves around stone. Quietly. Without calling attention to the path. She filed it under useful. Redirectable people were a resource. Her cradle went to the eastern wing. Quiet corridor. Far from the throne. Standard protocol. Keep the dragon princess safe. Keep her away. They did not understand she had placed herself here by not crying. A baby who never cried got moved toward silence. This was the room she needed. It had a window that looked directly into the main courtyard. She spent her first 3 days mapping the palace from that window. Guard rotations. Staff patterns. Which doors opened during episodes, which locked. On the 4th day, she heard the first one. Not loud, that was what surprised the new staff. The episodes were not loud. They were quiet. That was worse. A prince still at the throne room center, tracking something only he could see. The court knew the drill. Clear the room. Lock the outer doors. Wait. She did not lock her door. She watched. Rendael stood in the throne room for 40 minutes. Then he sat down on the floor like a child, and the episode ended. She noted the duration. Noted what preceded it. Noted who was present. She was building a map. Not of the palace. Of the curse. It had a pattern. Every curse did. She had spent 1,000 years thinking. She had thought about this one in considerable detail. On the 6th day, she made her first move. One kitchen staff member had begun showing early stage symptoms. The court had not noticed. Nisefor had noticed on day 2. When the woman passed the eastern wing, Nisefor reached through the bars. Not dramatically. Just a small hand extended. The way infants sometimes do. The woman stopped. Looked at the tiny hand. Then at the teal eyes behind it. Something made her sit down on the corridor floor and simply breathe. She did not know why. She stayed 20 minutes. Her hands had stopped shaking. She would not show stage 2 symptoms. The intervention was precise. Sarah watched from the doorway. Said nothing. But her expression changed. Nisefor filed Sarah under, suspects something. Useful in a different way. The first flashback came without warning on the 7th night. Not her choice. The seal weakened during sleep and the memories surfaced. Kaortan's study. Evening light through the tall windows of the Atlantis palace. He was reading. She had brought him tea without being asked. He looked up and smiled. The smile reached his eyes the way it always did. She had loved those eyes. She had trusted them absolutely. The memory ended where they always ended, before the seal, before the stone. She woke in the cradle. The eyes in the doorway were gold amber. Not his. Rendael stood at the nursery door, not during an episode. Simply standing. His eyes were his father's eyes, were Kaortan's eyes, were a dead man's eyes. She held his gaze. He looked away first. The second week brought a development she had not anticipated. Sarah had begun to watch her. Not suspicion, something more careful. One morning Sarah said quietly, "You're not a normal baby, are you?" It was not a question. Nisefor looked at her with the teal eyes and said nothing. Sarah nodded slowly and resumed her duties without mentioning it again. She had moved from useful to a lie. Nisefor made a note. By the third week she had stabilized 4 early-stage cases. The curse could not be broken from outside. She had known this. But it could be slowed. Cases held at stage 1. She was not doing this out of kindness. She was doing this because a functioning court served her plan. She needed witnesses. An intact institution to inherit when the time came. What she was building, in a cursed palace, was leverage. Rendael's third episode came Tuesday evening without preceding signs. No irritability that morning. No lost hours. He had been calm. The storm hit without weather. The court scattered in its practiced way. Everyone behind walls. Nisefor's door did not lock. She had replaced the latch on day 2. She heard it from the eastern wing. Something was different in this one. She climbed out of the cradle. She had been practicing for 2 weeks. The corridor was empty. Everyone behind closed doors. She walked toward the throne room on infant legs. Unhurried. Silent. The throne room doors were unlocked from outside. She pushed them open. Rendael stood at the center. Back to the door. Fighting and losing. She walked to the center and sat down on the floor behind him. No announcement. No reach. She occupied the same space and was still. The quality of silence in the room changed. He turned around. Gold amber eyes mid-episode. Not fully present. They found her. And something stopped. Not ended. Stopped. The way a storm pauses when the pattern is interrupted. She looked at him with the teal eyes she had looked at Kaortan with. He looked at her the way Kaortan had when he first understood what she was. Recognition. From before memory. From somewhere the curse could not reach. The episode did not end. But it changed. The violence quieted. He sat down on the floor in front of her. The throne room was still. They stayed like that until it passed. When it was over, he looked at her differently. Not with the confusion of someone looking at an infant. Something older. He did not speak. He stood, straightened his coat, and walked out. The court staff filed out without meeting each other's eyes. Sarah, in the doorway, looked at Nisefor for a long moment. Nisefor looked back. Nothing needed to be said. The palace would be different after this. The court would start asking questions. She had not planned for the recognition to happen this early. She adjusted. Not yet. Readiness was a tool. Timing was a weapon. Rendael, for the first time, started looking for her instead of away. She had not come back to be moved by gold amber eyes. She had a plan. She came back with a list and the patience of someone who lost everything once. But she filed the moment carefully. The recognition meant something she would understand. The Empire of Kaortan had not survived. The Empire of Atlantis had not survived. What she was building here did not need to survive. It needed to serve. The palace was broken before she arrived. She would be the reason it held. Subscribe. Part 3. The questions begin. She decides how much to let them see. The court would start asking questions. She was not yet ready to answer them. Not yet. Readiness was a tool. Timing was a weapon. Rendael, for the first time, started looking for her instead of away. She had not come back after 1,000 years to be moved by gold amber eyes. But she filed the moment carefully. The recognition meant something. The Empire of Kaortan had not survived. The Empire of Atlantis had not survived. What she was building here did not need to survive. It needed to serve. The palace had been broken before she arrived. Subscribe. Part 3. The questions begin. She decides how much to let them see.